Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Thinkercyze. I am Trevor Dykstra.
I'm Yours Garone.
I'm Yasral Tamimi.
Thinkercyze is a weekly virtual design challenge brought to you by some of our favorite designers. Each week, we're going to have a different challenge that you can do at home by yourself or with friends, presented or proposed by different designers in our community. And today we have Dan Duarte, a product designer at Microsoft and also founder of Mightier Than Co., which you can see the cool logo right behind him there. Dan, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Trevor?
Good.
How are you guys doing?
Well,
Doing
glad
well.
to have you
Welcome,
join
Dan.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
So, Dan, what? Well, we have a two-part question, which we've sort of gone through a little bit before here. First is what does a product designer do at Microsoft? And then second, tell us more about Mightier Than Co. here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what does a product designer do? That can be a long question. A product designer kind of wears a lot of hats. A lot of times we get referred to as generalists. Covers a lot of different things from user experience design, user interface design, interaction design, micro interaction design. A lot of times we're even putting on our project management hat or research, running user research, and even working directly with our engineers. So product design covers a lot of things, but at the end of the day, we're working in either a platform, software, then technology to really come up with the best user experience at the end of the day. It's human-centered design, so we're trying to solve real problems for real users.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, before kind of on the tail end of that question, what made you want to become a product designer? Because you're thinking as a kid, it's like, oh yeah, that's that one thing I wanted to do is design all the things.
Absolutely. That's a great question. I think when I think back, my career, I've been product designing for probably about 10 years, but I've been designing for 20 years. So I really got my start in traditional graphic design. That's my degree. That's my background. I worked a lot in independent music scenes. So when you're promoting yourself, you find the need to come up with a show poster or a flyer. And when you're up and coming, you really don't have the resources to go out there and hire a professional. So I picked up the Adobe Suite one day and taught myself and really just loved doing it. I did it for the love of designing logos and websites for people, all self-taught, and then said, you know what, I really just want to pursue a career in this. Let me go back to school. Let me get my degree in this. And then a few years out of school, I just found myself, or my career found its way into technology. So kind of a product designer by accident, but in a lot of ways, it's more fulfilling than my traditional design background because I'm affecting like so many people in a positive way. So that's really rewarding.
So great to hear.
Well, this is really cool to hear that. And since we are talking technical, let me ask you some technical questions here. Put you on
Sure.
the spot. So, how do you start each project? This is number one. And number two, when you hit a creative roadblock, what do you do?
Wow. So getting started, I think for any designer, that's a very daunting task to sort of look down at the screen or your sketchbook and you just have this sort of blank canvas to work with. At least at Microsoft, getting started really revolves around, again, solving a real user problem, a real user need. And the way we do that is we stay very in touch with our customers, and that means listening to feedback that's coming through feedback forms and different platforms, or working with them directly. We have something called the Lighthouse program where we're on customer calls weekly, bi-weekly, with IT decision makers as well as end users, just to understand real pain points. And then we sort of take that back and we'll sit down, we'll run a design sprint, and we'll see how do we solve this problem using the interface, right? And on top of that, we'll take that and we'll say, okay, this seems right, this feels right. but let's go back out and let's test this idea with our users again to make sure we're really answering the need. Because feedback may say one thing. It's like the old analogy, the user wanted a faster horse, but they didn't really know that they needed a car, right? So the feedback may not always, and I'm sure I'm butchering that quote completely, but the user feedback may not always translate into the end product exactly. So it's our job as designers to really listen and ultimately solve for that problem in the best way possible.
For sure.
And to your second question, so that was the roadblock, right?
We're big on two-part questions tonight.
Oh, I better be on my toes here. Okay, so, roadblocks. I'm having a roadblock right now, Yasser. So,
take your time.
Let me think about this one. So the great part is when you hit a roadblock, especially at Microsoft, like you're not alone, right? It's all about collaboration. The design process it's meant to be collaborative. Anyone that's designing in a silo, you know, you're going to be limited. You need sort of that diverse feedback that's coming in to make sure you're seeing the full picture. Like sometimes we can be so deep inside of a problem, we kind of lose that perspective. So a lot of times those turn into roadblocks. So, you know, tapping my partner designers on my team as well as partner designers across the company, it's a huge organization, and we have to make sure when we're creating these solutions that they scale across the entire ecosystem. So using user research, working with other designers, working with project managers to, you know, ensure we're still meeting the business needs at the end of the day. Sometimes it just takes a small conversation with the group to kind of get past that roadblock. So I would say communication, that's got to be the key. Always be talking, always be reviewing. Like critique is such an important part of the design process. And I know it can be tough, right? I mean, you think back to school and you kind of have to get up in front of your classmates and present your design and then
get grilled.
Everyone, exactly. We're poking holes in the design, but to make it better, right?
Sure.
So, and I know that's tough because we get sort of attached to our ideas and our creations, and you know, you just kind of have to take a step back and do what's right for the product, do what's right for the end user. So,
yeah, I've found that to be the biggest difference between like what's the world, the like professional world and school is the like this is no longer 100% your thing. You know, there's always an end user or a client, or you know, like you're not in school. You really are designing for like yourself, and it's like, well, sure there's a client, but you know, this is, and I respond to that quite a bit. Like
you build up a tough skin being a designer, you know, because everyone has ideas and everyone's ideas are valid. So it's kind of not about here, but it's about what will bring us the best solution at the end of the day. So being open-minded and empathetic to our users, like that's the most important quality a designer can have, is to be able to just sort of take yourself out of your own shoes and put yourself in the shoes of others to kind of understand their needs and how whatever we're making is going to impact them.
So true. So, to any aspiring product designers or graphic designers, what advice would you give them for their future, especially if they're like, oh, you know, I don't quite know yet. What do I want to what do I want to do? Always those hard questions, especially in high school.
Yeah, that's another great one. I would say, you know, depending where you're at in your career, I would say just get out there and start designing for free. Go find a friend or a family member. Maybe they need a website or a business card, and just get that practice. And it's not just about practicing pushing those pixels and conceptualizing the ideas visually. It's also about that communication of working one-on-one with the client and really listening to them and understanding their needs. And then next thing you'll know, you'll start building that confidence, and you'll start building a nice portfolio. So it's all those things that are going to be stepping stones that will ultimately get you to where you want to go. That at least worked for me. So
Great advice.
Well, I guess we should talk about this week's challenge. So Dan, you've prepared a challenge for this week.
did.
Do you want to tell us about it? This is for the audience listening. This is actually the first time we're all going to hear the full breadth of it as well, so that we're all on pins and needles.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we could just pause there for 1 second. Because I thought of a better answer for your question, Eurus. It was
No problem.
I feel like I didn't add to the product designer portion of it. I kind of spoke to more of the graphic design. I wonder if I could plug something real quick.
Yeah. So Eurus, ask it again, and then I can probably clip in from there.
Okay. So Dan, to any future aspiring product designers or graphic designers, what advice would you give them to help them start to feel comfortable about which path they want to choose?
Sure. Well, I think from a product design standpoint, I would say, you can pursue, your traditional routes of going to school or going to get a certificate degree through something like General Assembly. Or if you're even looking to transition from another career into product design, Microsoft actually offers a great career path for folks looking for something new. It's called the LEAP program. And this past year was actually the first instance we've run the LEAP program for UX design. So I believe it was 11 designers got an opportunity to come take an apprenticeship at the company and work on real product teams and get real hands-on experience. And most times than not, it turns into an actual full-time position. So if it's something you're interested in, definitely give it a web search, use Bing and the Edge browser. Oh, I'm plugging too much right now. I think this is overkill. But no, the LEAP program is just such a great opportunity. And we have a couple Leapers on our team at Microsoft Search. So shout out to them, and definitely a great option if you're looking to switch career paths into product design.
Are there prerequisites for something like that, or you just sort of have a desire to learn, or?
I think there are, because you do have to run through a pretty strenuous sort of interview process, and most people have at least some sort of certificate or some sort of classes they've taken to learn fundamentals in product design. So I would say, to get a leg up on the competition, definitely take those steps first.
At the point in your career, your career where you've done some educational aspects, but you haven't found that place yet, so to speak, I guess.
That's a great opportunity. That's for sure. Especially because, you get a little taste. Do I like it? Is this really what I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
You don't always get that opportunity.
That's right. I wish I had that when I was young enough.
Yeah, for sure.
Just a blind walking through a career. It's like, I think this is about right. Yeah, this feels good.
And it's always great to get a mentor, right?
So
that too. Yeah, that's a big part of it. I had a chance to work with a few of these designers, and from the interview process to actually even going in to the LEAP classroom. So I believe it's about a 8-week program. No, it's got to be longer than that. I think it's 16 weeks, but the first 4 weeks are actually spent in a classroom with subject matter experts at the company coming through and really getting hands-on and teaching these leapers the ins and outs of product design, but also the company, because it is such a large organization. There's a lot you need to know, and there's a lot of just insight and knowledge from these folks to help you sort of navigate your different product teams.
Yeah, it's stuff that needs to be replicated in other fields. Like, we have a little bit in the architecture field, where if you find a firm that sort of values the idea of education as well as sort of just seeing employees as production,
True.
or the other thing, I benefited from something like Leap, firms as well, where they were willing to take a risk on you and use that to train you, even though you weren't necessarily at that stage going to be something that was generating income for the company, so to speak. They had a broader thinking on it. So it's commendable that Microsoft's doing something like that.
It really is so important, because you look at just even the internship program, and you see consistent schools and different programs they look for talent at, which is great. But I mean, if we really want to, have the most diverse set of talent and perspectives going into the work, then it's so important for something like Leap to open it up to everyone.
That's great. Well, let's. This is going to feel like a hard shift turn, but so now we're gonna jump into this week's challenge, which you've prepared for us. I know it has something to do with flags,
Yes.
or I think it still does, but I don't know what. And so I'm going to let you, Dan, take it away with what we're going to be doing this week.
Absolutely. And I'm going to glance down at my notes here. I don't have this all memorized, but the idea with this week's challenge, I really wanted to kind of take a step back to sort of more of my traditional design roots and sort of pick a topic that is inclusive enough for everyone to participate in. So I wanted to also tap into similar challenges that you guys have done so far in the regards that we're using sort of color and shape. And that's my phone. Color and shape to sort of symbolize things. So I immediately thought of a flag, and not just like a country or a city flag, but almost your own personal flag that represents yourself, maybe your family, your journey, or sort of your ideal state, your utopia almost. So if you've got pen and paper handy, construction paper, you have a tool that you want to use online, Figma, Photoshop, Illustrator, I want to leave this open to sort of any medium. And I've actually provided a list of sort of the 5 basic principles of flag design that's put together by NAVA, which is the North American Vexillological Association, which is essentially an organization that studies and curates the history of flags. They've got these 5 principles, but what's important to mention is they're not hard set rules. Like, at the end of the day, this is a creative exercise, and it needs to most importantly symbolize something that's important to you. So we do want to leave that open for interpretation, folks. So I can actually walk through the different principles and possibly even do a screen share to kind of show you some examples of good design for flags and maybe some not so good design. I think if there's any Roman Mars fans out there, he does a great 99% Invisible podcast on flag design and sort of points out these principles, and you see the full gamut across local cities, the countries. Like, not everyone gets it right. The principles kind of get lost sometimes, so it's just important to keep them in the back of your mind. So I'll kind of run down the list here, if that's all right.
Sure, go ahead.
All right, so
Dan Duarte here, product designer for Microsoft and founder of Mightier Than Co. And I'll be walking you through this week's Thinkercyze. It is week 3, and we are going to be focusing on flag design, your personal flag design. And I'll walk you through 5 basic principles on how to guide you down designing your flag. It may represent you, your life, your journey, or your ideal state, your utopia, something that sort of connects and symbolizes what you represent. So we'll walk through the 5 basic principles along with some do's and don'ts, the good, the bad, and the ugly of flag design. And then I'll leave you with some thought-inspiring questions to help you start thinking about symbolism and ultimately how you use color and shape to represent your ideal state. So let's quickly walk through the 5 basic principles of flag design outlined by NAVA, which is the North American Vexillological Association. First step, keep it simple. You want to really make sure that it's identifiable, memorable, and something so simple that a child can actually draw it from memory. 2, use meaningful symbolism. The flag's images and colors and patterns really need to relate to what it stands for, what it symbolizes. And we'll walk through some examples in a moment of good symbolism. Number 3, use color sparingly. We want to use about 2 to 3 basic colors something that contrasts well, something that may potentially look good if this was to drop to a gray scale, only using gray tones. So keep it simple. Number 4, lettering and seals. I know we see this on a lot of our favorite state flags, including my home states, Florida and now Washington, but they don't always translate that well from a distance, so try to use seals sparingly, or not at all. Number 5, be distinctive. You want to be able to stand out, be unique, avoid duplicating other flags. I think you'll see common elements through lots of flags, but be original. And lastly, and I'll just say this as a disclaimer, or maybe the unofficial 6th principle, these are just guidelines. They're not exactly hard, fast rules, right? So we're designers. The idea is to be original, be innovative. Use these as guidelines to help walk you through the process. There goes my phone. But also feel free to break those rules where you think it makes sense and where it could lead you to a compelling final product. All right, on to ratio. So not a basic principle, but something I thought I would call out here, with the meta point really being find a ratio that works for you. We can see ratios across the board. They vary. There's no standard. Maybe this is an opportunity to create some sort of symbolism out of the numbers that you're using in your ratio. If it's 1-to-1 or 3-4, something to keep in mind. Just thought I'd throw it out there. Let's talk a little bit about the anatomy of a flag. So there's a few different parts here in some traditional flag designs. The first one being the field. So this is considered to be the most important part of the flag. Sometimes it's a solid color, sometimes it's stripes. Sometimes we see a lot of things going on here, but generally this is meant to represent sort of your core and the most important part. Second being the header and the hoist. I feel like this is the most sort of functional part of the flag, being that we are using this to hang it to its grommets or some holes here along the side. Commonly it's a white strip going up and down. Not much design to go into here unless you want to get unique. I'll leave that up to you. The fly, as we see right here on the far right end, is the part of the flag that, you guessed it, flies in the wind. So just another portion to kind of cover this anatomy end to end. And the last, I thought this is really interesting, which is the canton. And I didn't know this, but this position was generally held in the past to represent like your mother country, or the country sort of ruling over you. In this case, the flag of Bermuda, which was a colony, had Union Jack up here to sort of signify that this is who they answer to, I guess. In the U.S. flag, that sort of represents our 50 states, while in the field we see our stripes to represent our original colonies. So that's just a little bit about the anatomy of the flag. Okay, on to symbolism. So this is where it gets fun in my eyes. This is where we can really sort of dive in deep and start to create something that is really personal to us. And I'll just have to excuse myself for the pixelated image here, but I just wanted to include some examples, and I'll include a link to this full deck so you can zoom in a little bit closer. And I picked a few examples that I think really stand out, the first being the flag of Chicago. So first of all, these different stripes and the way they are sectioned out here all have symbolism to them. As we can see, the top representing your north side, this sort of first blue strip here representing Lake Michigan and North Branch of the Chicago River. So this blue representing water, that's so interesting, and the South Branch representing the Chicago River and the Great Canal. And the center portion representing this west side, and the bottom, the south side. And then the stars. The stars are really intricate. I won't go into each one of them, but each star represents a significant point in the city's history, and then each point of the star has an even deeper meaning behind it. So a really great usage of symbolism. So almost little Easter eggs that you can include within your design that really hold something beyond first look. Second flag is the flag of Nepal here, and I'm just calling this one out purely on its just awesome shape that it takes on, not your traditional rectangle. But I think they do a wonderful job of just the use of colors as well as these symbols, and the sort of shape of the flag here represent the Himalayas, the sun and the moon symbols to represent calm and resolve. We sort of went through the different symbolism of the United States flag. I won't spend much time here, but also to call out the meaning of the colors behind the pride flag. I thought this was great, and we've seen this flag evolve over the years, and just to see all these different colors called out for what they stand for is awesome, because I didn't know that right off the bat, but you can kind of see how each one of these colors sort of embodies the principle behind it, or the feeling behind it. And lastly, onto some do's and don'ts. I won't go over these in detail right now, but feel free to download the deck and take a closer look. You can kind of see all those principles that we covered, being used very well, especially in New Mexico and this award-winning flag here. Maybe not so great in Virginia with the use of the seal. We can kind of see that this image gets lost a bit, but feel free to dive into these. You can also download Naba's book. I'll include a link to that for free in the description as well. And lastly, here's a list of questions to get you to start thinking about symbolism. As you go through each one of these, maybe jot them down on a piece of paper and start to think how maybe color or different shapes or different symbols can begin to embody the answers to these individual questions. They'll cover your journey, people that you've encountered along your way. What can you live with? What can't you live without? What do you stand for? What's important to you? Things like that, to really start to have it connect to something personal within your life, and ultimately create this one visual representation of what it is that you stand for, or where you're going, or something that you love. So that's it for me. Really looking forward to seeing everyone's submissions to this week's Thinkercyze. All right, talk more soon. See ya.
I wanted to ask if you had any final tips for people, generally for when they're thinking about beyond the 5 principles, or maybe those are the tips. When you're sort of working through the graphic design of this flag. Some additional sort of tips.
So I do outline a few questions outside of the 5 general principles that might help you start thinking about the symbolism of the flag. So I think that might be the hardest part for folks, because I think we can, we'll gravitate towards certain shapes that might represent an idea or something important to us, or a certain set of colors, but you really want to start with thinking about what this is going to represent. So I've outlined a few questions to sort of get your mind thinking in that space. So if the map is or the flag is to represent us or our journey or where we want to go, like what are some sort of key stones, some milestones that we would need to achieve or walk past in order to get where we want to go? Or what still needs to be done to get where we want to go? Or who are people that are important to us along this journey? Or who do we still need to meet along the way? Like, what is important to you? Like, if you were on a stranded island, what would you bring? Things that sort of inspire you visually or within nature. And I'm kind of brain dumping a lot of different ideas here, but I think it's these sort of questions you just want to ask yourself. And you don't need to write them down or type them down or anything, but just start to consider them as you think of this one image that will ultimately represent this ideal state.
That's great.
Yeah.
So we're actually way over time. Thank you for being so generous with it.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna end with our final question, which we've been asking every week, and hopefully I will word this correctly one of these weeks. We've been talking about sort of, we've shared a lot of advice for young folks in their career, and you've mentioned yourself, you're 20 plus years into your design journey, so to say. Well, the question is to, our festival theme this year is about time, and we've been asking you to sort of look back in time to where you were when you first sort of started out as a designer, however you want to define that, whether that was, okay, well, this is when I started this college or program, or this is this point in my youth where I decided I want to be this, and to where you are now, and then also where you think you will be sort of at the tail end of your sort of progress as a designer. And so this person right now, what advice would you give yourself at that age, or at the beginning of your career, and what would you want yourself at the end of your career to know or to remember?
So
is that clear? Imagine those three people in a room and they're having a conversation. What are the words of wisdom each one shares with the other, so to speak?
Young and the old.
So, I mean, at least from where I'm at now, thinking back to when I get started, where I got started, I would probably just let myself notice to stick with it, because there are going to be tons of ups and downs, and we were speaking about this earlier, like the ebb and flow of it's the nature of the new projects that we take on, and then you dive in deep and you understand it, and then you solve the problem, and then it's on to the next one. So even outside of a particular job, working with clients or looking for a new job, there's going to be tons of scenarios out there that are going to seem like the end of the world, but they're not. So really, I would just say stick with it, and you'll ultimately get where you're going. As far as where that road ends, it's funny because we're always sort of planning for the future, and we're thinking about scalability, and it's part of the job to sort of future cast so we can solve for problems that don't exist yet, right? Be proactive. But when it comes to like the end of the road for a career, it's something I haven't given a ton of thought. I think if you were to ask myself 20 years ago, I'd be here now, I'd be completely surprised. So I kind of enjoy that serendipitous part of the journey. So I hope that answers.
That's great, especially for a poorly worded question. That's excellent.
Makes sense.
Well, let's. I think we'll call it there. Thank you, Dan, for joining us. We do want to. I think we should ask where people can find you online or your work online.
Sure. So you can find my product design portfolio and contact information at danduarte.com. Or you can reach out to me on Instagram at mightierthanco, or visit mightierthan.co to see a little bit of my passion project.
Excellent. All right.
Awesome.
Well, for everybody listening, thank you for sitting through this very long video. We'll look for your submissions or even just your progress on thinkercyze.com. Follow along with this week's challenge. Thank you very much, everybody.